Hi everybody. So today we're going to read a story and a poem, and the theme is hair. So I think we read this one before. It's called Crazy Hair Day, and it's by Barney Salzberg. He wrote the book and did the pictures. He's the author and the illustrator, and it's just a little bit of a silly story about a mix-up, a confusion, and then I have a poem as well to go with that. Crazy Hair Day. It goes like this. Stanley Birdbaum woke up early. Bald Eagle Elementary School was celebrating Crazy Hair Day, and Stanley couldn't wait. They had celebrated Pajama Day, Twin Day, and 60s Day. Stanley's favorite was Twin Day because he and his best friend Larry Finchfeather had worn exactly the same thing. Stanley was ready. He had rubber bands, he had styling gel, and to make his hair perfect, Stanley had 2 cans of Halloween hairspray. Stanley's mother knew just what to do. She wrapped, she dipped, and to make his hair perfect, she sprayed Stanley's hair bright orange and blue. "Ta-da!" said Stanley. "I am a work of art." "You are going to be late if you don't hurry," said his mother. Stanley rolled the rubber bands in his hair. He gently tapped the tops of his spikes. "This," he said, "is going to be a day I will never forget. I bet Larry Finchfeather and I will have the craziest hair in the whole school," Stanley thought. As he walked toward the classroom, he heard his teacher talking. "And remember," Mr. Winger said, "Crazy Hair Day is next Friday." Everybody stopped. Everybody stared. Stanley felt sick. Larry Finchfeather said, "Is that a hair do or a hair don't?" Everybody laughed, and Stanley ran to the bathroom. A few minutes later, Stanley heard someone come in. "It's me, Larry Finchfeather." "The Larry Finchfeather who just made fun of me in front of our whole class?" asked Stanley. "I was only teasing," said Larry. "Some days you tease me too much," said Stanley. "Mr. Winger said he wants me to try to be a peacemaker instead of a troublemaker," said Larry. "I'm supposed to bring you back to class?" "Well, I'm not going," said Stanley. "If you stay in here, you'll be missing the whole class picture," said Larry. "I thought that was next Friday," said Stanley. "Crazy Hair Day's next Friday," Larry said. "Today is school picture day." Stanley rolled the rubber bands in his hair. He gently tapped the tops of his spikes. "This," he said, "is going to be a day I will never forget." Larry Finchfeather suggested that Stanley try washing his hair in the sink. "It won't help," said Stanley. "Halloween hair color lasts for days." "Well, it really doesn't matter. It's only your hair," said Larry. "If you don't come out of here by the time math is over, I'm coming to get you. You can't stay in here all day." It was very quiet after Larry left, and Stanley wondered if maybe he could spend all day in the bathroom. He ate his lunch. He drew pictures. He even timed himself to see how fast he could flush all the toilets. 32.5 seconds, he shouted. "A new world record by me, Stanley Birdbaum." Stanley had counted up to 121, 122, 123 drops of water from a leaky faucet when Larry Finchfeather came back. "Beep! Time's up, let's go," Larry announced. "Picture time." "If I'm in it, I'll look like the class weirdo," said Stanley. "Remember 60s Day when Mr. Winger had the flu but came anyway?" said Larry. "He said the day wouldn't be the same if we weren't all together. You have to come. I'll give you 5 minutes. Larry Finchfeather left, and Stanley Birdbaum thought about 60s Day when Mr. Winger had taught them all those great old songs. He remembered how on Pajama Day everyone in his class had worn PJs and slippers, and then Stanley imagined what his class picture would look like without him. He decided to go back to class. To keep from being nervous, Stanley made up a song. "Crazy hair, how I wish it wasn't there." Stanley felt someone touch his shoulder. I was just coming to get you, Larry Finchfeather said. What if they laugh at me again? Asked Stanley. Everyone will be fine, Larry whispered. I promise. Stanley stood in front of his class. Everybody stopped. Everybody stared. Stanley rolled the rubber bands in his hair. He gently tapped the tops of the spikes. This, he said, is going to be a day I will never forget. So if you look closely at the class picture, what did all of the other kids and Mr. Winger do? They all made crazy hair day for themselves for the class picture. So when Stanley went to bed that night, he went to bed with a big smile on his face because all of his friends had done something to make him feel better about being embarrassed. So I love that story. And then the poem to go with it by Shel Silverstein is called The Long-Haired Boy. And here's the picture that goes with it. It's a lot of hair. There was a boy in our town with long hair. I mean, really long hair. And everybody pointed at him and laughed at him and made fun of him. And when he walked down the street, the people would roar and stick their tongues out and make funny faces and run in and slam their door and shout at him from the window until he couldn't stand it anymore. So he sat down and cried till his whole body shook. And pretty soon his hair shook too. And it flapped and flapped and he lifted and flew. And there he goes. Have a great weekend. See you on Monday.